Okay. Sorry about that. I ordered pizza and it showed up right as we were supposed to start, so I just freaking scarfed it. Did we have an attendance question last week, or did I somehow just not catch it? We did have one. We did have one, so if you scrub through the last few minutes of the stream, you should be able to find it. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Yeah, my pizza was way slow to get here. They ring the doorbell right as I'm supposed to go live, so it's all good. How's everybody doing? Good? Everybody having a good day so far? Hopefully you are enjoying your week up to this point. We're halfway done, right? Oh, what kind of pizza? It was just Domino's. Cheap garbage pizza, but it was fine. It's just fine. If it were my choice, my favorites are probably if I'm gonna order it, I tend to like, I guess Domino's isn't terrible, but I prefer probably, I don't know. I guess I like Papa John's if I'm doing like takeout pizza. Like pizza places around the city here. There's a place called Lisa's Pizza. That's probably my favorite pizza in the valley. Oh, good first half of your semester. Okay, perfect. That all ended, so you're in good spirits. That's good. I forget that they break those up sometimes into like half semesters. It's always nice. Pizza tier list for sure. So what's on the schedule for today is we're just going to keep going through Illustrator. I know some, Papa Murphy's is good too. I know some people were having a little bit of a hard time with Illustrator, so what I want to do is kind of go over a couple of tools, and then I want to also show you some new tools as well, maybe some hotkeys that will help. I know there was a big tool that we didn't cover, which is the brush tool, and that was kind of on purpose because I didn't want to throw too many things at you, but I know that some people said they were struggling a little bit, so we're gonna pull up our logo that we've been working on, and we may just kind of mess around and go over some tools. Really, I kind of mentioned it in my last class, but my job is to give you guys the tools, right? Give you guys the tools and the ability to problem solve in these situations, right? If I just sit here and just draw the logo and you watch me draw the logo, you could copy what I did, but you're not really learning, like, you know, the proper tools in order to problem solve. So that's what I want to do for you. And I want to give you guys, some more hotkeys and things that can help make the job a little bit easier. So, and I'm learning something new. Illustrator is not my first software that I ever learned. So I'm learning new things every day. This program does so much that even I've used it quite a bit and actually sold logos doing it, right? Like I built logos for companies and sold them to them using Illustrator before. But I'm still learning new things in this software. So let's open up our block logo that we were working on last time. Cool. Okay. So we worked on this little character the last time, this little logo right here. And it's not bad. It is fairly usable. I'm actually kind of happy with it. However, there are some things that we could adjust, maybe do something like this to it, There are some things we could do to adjust this, but what I want to show you are a couple different tools. So I'm going to scoot our logo up here for a minute, and we're going to talk about a few different tools, okay, that are going to be super helpful. Let me shrink my face a little bit so I'm not covering this screen so you guys can see what's going on. I'll just move myself over here in the bottom corner. Hopefully that's good and I'm not covering things up. Hopefully I can full screen this. Okay, cool. So a couple different tools that we didn't necessarily talk about last week that I'd like to talk about in order to continue working inside of Illustrator and doing some nice, cool things. The first one is the brush tool. Okay. The brush tool is going to be similar to how your brush tool functions in Photoshop, but not exactly. And the brush tool is one of those tools where you might find it useful to plug in your drawing tablets. So let's throw that on there real quick. Okay, now where's my pen? There we go. So I also might need to remap since I moved my monitors around a little bit. Become go to monitor 2. Okay, cool. So with the cool thing about the brush tool, okay, is that it has automatic smoothing built in. So for those of you that are like not super comfortable painting, I'm going to show you how nice this is, right? So this is going to show you what my stroke looks like, right? Like I'm just kind of painting. It comes in here and automatically smooths that stuff, which is super nice, right? So if you're trying to make a really custom shape, right? You're trying to get something, you know, really crazy or whatever, it's going to come in here and create that shape for you. So let's say we're trying to do like, I don't know, we did a little cloud last time. Or you're trying to make, you know, some sort of shape that doesn't quite line up, that you're trying to do it quickly, you know, trying to create something, you know. It's just super nice for doing things like this. And the other nice thing about it is that you can adjust how much that brush smooths. So if you go to the brush properties, where is it at? I gotta remember where this is. You have your paintbrush. It lives somewhere around here where it says smoothing. Is it tool options? Yes. Okay, so if up here at the top while you're in your paintbrush, if you click on these tool options right here, this is going to tell you how smooth, right, the fidelity of that line. So if you want it accurate to what you're drawing, right, so this is going to be more accurate to what I'm drawing. It's not going to smooth it very much, right? But if I change this to do a really heavy smooth on what I'm drawing, now if I'm drawing something like this, it's going to really smooth it out and try to correct what I'm drawing, right? So let's say I'm drawing a little, I don't know, dinosaur head or something. So I'm here. It's really going to come in here and smooth things out for me. Which is really nice, right? Sometimes it might not be exactly what you want, right? And so you could come back through and say, okay, maybe that's not how smooth I want that, right? But you can see how much that's smoothing out. Like if I do, I really like that shape right there. Remember that Control C and Control V work the same as they do in your other programs, right? So you can copy and paste things relatively easily. And when you're in your main select, right, which is the black arrow, gives you the ability to like move and manipulate objects. Okay. So the brush tool is super helpful, right? So you have those tool options, but also when you're in the brush tool, you can come over here to this side and they give you some brushes to kind of mess with. This is not nearly the same level of customization that you have inside of, let's say, Photoshop, right? I believe there are brush packs you can download. I don't really use them because I don't honestly, I mean, I use this tool a lot. I should use it more than I do. But I just don't end up using it because I love how some other tools function in here. Okay. So let's say you like this shape. Okay, you like a couple of these shapes. You've come in here and there's some gaps in here and you want to start adjusting these things, right? So if you come in here and click on your path with your main select tool, it's only going to give you the ability to like click and drag and adjust it in this way. You might be able to change, you know, the overall shape of this object just a little bit, right? But let's say you want to combine these paths. Right now, some of these paths are a little interesting looking, right? So the pen tool can come into assistance here, where everything inside of Illustrator, you need to remember that everything inside of Illustrator is built out of paths, right? They're paths and shapes, okay? And when a path is created, paths have anchor points. So these anchor points are what are holding the path's shape, okay? So if everywhere you look, when you're in your direct select tool and you select on an object, you're going to see all these different anchor points, and these are what are holding the object's shape, okay? So again, we need to remember that we have our two different forms of select, right? We have our main select, which is going to select the object overall or the path overall. And then you have your direct select tool, which is going to select the path and then give you the ability to manipulate the path in order to move and adjust and change things, okay? So when you are in your direct select tool and you click the pen tool, right? When you've direct selected something, you're going to notice that when I hover over this path, a little plus sign is going to pop up. It might be small on your screen, but if you look really close next to the pen tool, a little plus sign pops up, okay? And if you hover over an anchor point, you'll see a negative sign pops up. If I click that negative sign, I can start deleting anchor points, okay? And just so, like, perfect example here, there's a little extra anchor point in here that I don't want, right? It kind of messes with my shape here. So if I delete this, now it kind of adjusts this here. There may be a little bit of, you know, adjustment that needs to happen, or you come in here with your direct select tool and you click on this object and you move this and you try to do your best, you know. So you can come in here with your pen tool and delete anchor points, right? And then you could come back with your pen tool and maybe add an anchor point, then use your direct select tool and move that anchor point, you know, back out to where you want that, okay? So you click that anchor and you move that, right? So you'll notice too, when you click on an anchor point, these little handles kind of come off of here. These allow you to rotate that anchor point. So now we can really kind of adjust, you know, what is happening here to create a more unique shape, right? Now, you'll notice, let's say this is where we're happy with how this looks right now. But there's a problem, right? We've got two ends to our paths that don't quite line up. It doesn't create a clean looking shape, right? So what we can do here is there's a couple different objects or tools that we could use, right? We could come in here with our anchor, with our direct select tool, and click on our anchor and drag it and snap it to this other anchor point here, okay? That's one option. And that would work for the most part. Or I believe if we hover and multi-select over the top of both these anchor points and go object, path, join, it will join those two paths, and it's going to create an extra anchor point. But what we could do is come back, like I said, and just delete one of these anchor points. Now we're going to have one solid path all the way around. So there's a couple different options. You're going to notice that there's, similarly to some of the other softwares we've been working in, Illustrator has, you know, 10, 15 different ways to do the same thing. Maybe not 10 or 15, but it definitely has a couple different options in order to achieve a similar outcome, right? So, you know, if you click and drag this anchor point here to here and snap it, those still aren't going to be one anchor point. So if you were to click and move that anchor point again, what you need to do is still come in here and go object, path, join, and then it will join those right at that point, okay? So you still need to use that join. The nice thing though with this option is you can just hover over these two, you know, like open-ended points and do object, path, join. It creates that extra, you know, anchor point in there because it almost bridges the two paths together. And then you can take your pen tool while you're still in your direct select option, and then you can just delete that anchor point. Same outcome, right? Now we have a nice clean shape there. doing what we want it to do. Okay. Similar things can happen here too, where if you want to use that main select or direct select, sorry, you can come in and use, click on anchor points and snap them to lines, right? So I can snap it right to that path so things line up. And then this, same thing here. So we're getting these clean lines. And this is a really silly object that we're doing this on, but it's a good lesson, right? You can come in and snap all these things together. Yes. Exactly. Now you're seeing the inner workings. Okay, so we've kind of snapped those things along this path. We could do a similar thing here now where we click on their path here, multi-select these 2 points, hit object, path, join. That's kind of nice. I actually don't mind how that looks. If we were really not digging it, we could come in here, click on our pen tool after we've selected it with our direct select and delete a couple of these if we wanted. I actually kind of like that look better. And what it did was mess with this a little bit so we can re-grab our anchor and snap it back. Now the nice thing, or something that we could use now, is one of those situations where we might want to use I'm just going to grab our whole object here and just move this in the center so we can we're just going to play with this little dinosaur head right now. So in this sense, right, there's still some things we need to do. There's a piece here where we might want to come back here and come in with an anchor and draw a line, something like this, and maybe there's some stuff that needs to be done. So this is a situation where we could come back with our pen tool, drop a new anchor on this path, then come back with our direct select, click on that anchor and do something like this. And now I'm going to show you another piece to these paths, right? When you create an angle with a path, you're going to see when you click on a path with your direct select tool, when you click on an anchor, somewhat inconvenient 3D modeling with messed up edges, but in 2D. Maybe a little bit. So if you click on an anchor point, right, you can round out an edge, okay, which is super helpful. So let's say you have this anchor point, you've created an angle, but you want to put a little bit of a smooth to it. You can click this angle piece here and round that out, and you can do that here as well, right? Now we'll round these two out. So now we've kind of matched the rest of the shape language on this head here, and maybe we could even do the same, something similar over here if we needed to. Okay. I actually kind of like the idea here of doing something like this. Okay. So some other things to think about, okay, is when you're working with a path. Let's say I've drawn, a straight path like this. Okay. Let's actually draw a straight path here. You can hold shift to create orthographic lines. Okay. So let's say I bump this up. We'll bump the stroke on this up a little bit so we can see a little bit better. Let's say I wanted to cut a segment out of this object. Okay. If I came in here in direct select mode and just hit delete on this, it's going to delete the whole object, right? But let's say I'm trying to cut a piece of this out. I can come in here and add an anchor point here and an anchor point here, and then direct select this piece of the path right here and hit delete, and it's going to cut, right? So you can use anchor points in order to delete certain objects too. There's also a cut tool that allows you to do something similar. But we'll come back to that. The other thing too, right, is the tool that we talked about last week, where we used our shape builder tool. So from this point, right, we've created this little dinosaur head. We could put a fill on this object, you know, something like this. But now we've got, you know, some interesting things happening here where it doesn't quite know what to do or how to create this shape, right? So there's some things we can do, right? We could either use our shape builder tool like this and come in here and combine these shapes, right? Like if I came in here like this, did something like that, it could combine those shapes for us, right? Or we could come back and take some of these shapes and kind of clean them up, right? Add more paths to them and then join. So there's a couple different options we have where we can delete out segments, right, of the head and then maybe line them up this way. You know, using the shape builder tool is always a good option, right? So if we have that shape builder tool, we just come in here and line these up like this, right? And now we've got a clean line there that's got all of our heads in there, or not heads, are all of our little kind of bumps or spines in there. And then let's say we wanted to not have the fill inside of these objects. The nice thing with the shape builder tool, when I hovered over all of these things and only combined these objects together, right, it left these two objects out of that mix, right? If I came in here and combine these by clicking and dragging and hovering over those, it's going to remove those two objects. But since I didn't do that, it left them as separate objects that I could come in and then delete, right? So now we have that object cut out of our little dinosaur here. And the fill and stroke can always be adjusted, right? It's not like you've set a permanent fill and stroke to this and you're done, right? If you're over in your options over here, you can always come in and adjust that. And now let's say, you know, you wanted to come in and add some colors or something to this object here. You know, maybe you want to give them a red eye or something. You could come in with a shape tool. You know, a pretty simple shape tool. You could either use an ellipse or something and just draw a circle and give it a red fill. Okay, you don't even have to have a stroke on it. And then you could do something similar where you select all of these things and you just click with your shape builder tool this area right here. Then you come back and just delete this outside area, and now it's created, you know, the shape to fit inside of the eye right there. And you could put this eye on a different layer, which then could be turned on and off. So that shape builder tool can be super helpful and super useful in order to make things work, right? And you saw kind of how the gradient tool worked last week, right? Where if I just come in and click on a shape, now I have a gradient that I can use, right? I should be able to change this gradient. I got to remember exactly how to do that. It's different from Photoshop's gradient. Here we go. So I could give him, you know, a green, and then I could come in and change this color. Come on. It's not quite the same as Photoshop's. There we go. I thought it was a double click, but it didn't take my double click the first time I did it. So there we go. Okay, so now I've set that gradient. I can re-click in here. I should be able to at least. Unless it doesn't want to take it now. See why it doesn't want to do that. Hello, gradient tool. Oh, it wants to take the path. What am I doing? Not sure why that's not accepting my gradient. Putting it on the stroke instead of the fill. I'll have to figure out why it's doing that. I can't remember why it is not accepting that. Oh, it's because I think it's because I have this selected. There we go. That's why. I've got to remember the tool. So if you have the stroke selected inside of your gradient tool, that's why. It's different than the way that that works. So now it should accept it when I click the object. And you can adjust how that gradient works. You can adjust the level at which that gradient's going through. Yes, there is a way to change the direction the gradient moves in. So it's based off of this line right here when you submit that gradient. Is it Alt? I need to remember how that works too. Good question. So for here, yes, I believe it's here. So if you go, so let's say you're going to take your gradient here. I think if you have it in a linear gradient like this, you can change your angle of that gradient here. Multiple gradient, a gradient across multiple separate objects. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Let's see. So we'll just move our little head out of here for a second. So if I've got a couple of squares or something like this, and we run a gradient across these, I could have swore there was a way to change the angle on this. There it is. Okay, so it's a little finicky. It's like I could have swore you could do it. So if you hover, so when you drop that gradient on your object, right? If you hover over this little black anchor point at the end, you'll see right at the tip, it will change to a little rotate arrow. And that's where you can manipulate how you're going to do that, right? And then you can extend that gradient in whichever way you want. I don't know if I do like a shift click like this. Let's try this. These are things, some of these things I haven't. So if I go like this and then apply a gradient like this, yeah, it's not going to do it between these three objects. But wonder if I group them. So if you go object group, I wondered now if I do it like this. You might have to, you know what you could do in order to do that? You could do something like this. Let's say you had 3 circles and you wanted a gradient to go across all 3 of these circles. That's a great question. You could use the shape builder tool to do this, I think, if I'm thinking properly. So if you come to the rectangle tool and come in here and you put a gradient on this, okay? And then you go like this and multi-select all of those and then use the shape builder tool and just cut out those shapes. Oh, it doesn't save it though. That's lame. Can you rasterize the gradient? That's a good question. See how I thought that might work properly? So if I took it like this and then I use my shape builder tool to like chop it out, but then it regradients those shapes. It doesn't quite work the same way. I'll look into that a little bit better. And if I can figure it out, I'll post a short video. That's a good question. You can always do this too. Gradient cross multiple objects. Somebody else asked that. To apply to gradient field, select all the objects, drag to select. So if I have all these and press G, have them all selected. To apply a gradient field across multiple objects in Illustrator, select all the objects, drag to select, or shift click them, select the gradient tool, and drag out the gradient in the direction you want. With all the relevant objects selected, click the gradient tool icon or press G on your keyboard. That's what I just did. I don't want to apply a same existing gradient. It's not quite doing what I want it to do. Let's see. Okay, so they have multiple objects. This is good. It's easy to do. Yeah, so by default, the gradient applies to each individual object rather than the grouping of objects as a whole. Okay. Yeah, see how it applies to grouping. If we want a single gradient that spans across each right. Compound path. Okay, so we have to use a compound path. So let's try this maybe on this here. Maybe we can do it on these. Since all these are separate objects. So object, ungroup, object. Where was that compound path? Object compound path at the bottom. Make a compound path. Okay, now let's try. Aha, cool. Okay, there you go. So the command was compound path. Then you can adjust that gradient by clicking and dragging on it. You can rotate it. So compound path is the way to do it. Nice. Yeah. Sorry. That's different than how, like I said, that's way different than how Photoshop's gradient works. And I've actually never used that before. So I learned something too. So compound pathing. So you can create several objects. So let's say you wanted to do that again, just if you missed that while we were trying to figure that out. So if I had, 3 objects like this, okay, then we'd go object compound path make, and then we could apply a gradient to this and set this gradient, to whatever, which is pretty cool. So that's how you do that. That's super helpful. Okay, I'd like to answer more questions like that for you. Since people were struggling to try to figure out certain things to do in here, there are some other tools I could show you. I think one that might be helpful, let's say you're trying to create a circle logo. Let's say you're trying to create a clock, okay? I don't know why you'd have a clock for any of these, but let's go ahead and throw a circle path in here, okay? I'm going to show you a couple of tools. So let's say I have a circle. I'm trying to build a clock. We're just going to throw, a black stroke on this. We'll bump up the stroke. We'll take the fill out of it. Okay. And then we're going to use our align tools to get this aligned in the middle of our canvas here. So I'm going to hit under Windows. You can turn on the align window by just clicking this little checkbox right here under align, and that will turn on your align window. And then I'm just going to align it center and then horizontally. Okay. So let's say I'm trying to build a clock. If I wanted to start drawing a clock, right, I need some lines. So let's go ahead and draw a little rectangle line here. We'll throw just a black fill on this and we'll turn off the stroke. Okay. Then what I want to do is I'm going to align this one center and I'm just going to bring it down here into my circle. Okay. And this is going to be, using the rotate tool. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this path. I'm going to go ahead and click rotate. And then I'm going to hover until I find the little thing that says center here. I use this tool all the time. It's super helpful when I'm creating like circle logos. You'll see, I'll show you a couple ones that I have for examples. But if I find and hover where it says center and I hit Alt and click, now you're going to see that this rotate thing comes up, okay? And what I want to do is I'm going to do 360, right? Because I want to copy this thing 360 degrees around my circle, okay? But then I'm going to divide that by hitting slash on here, okay? And I'm going to divide that by how many times I want this to go around my circle. So let's say if I want 4 quadrants, 6 quadrants around here, right? So I do all the way around. Let's divide it by 6. Or if we're doing let's do it by, so I'm trying to think if we're going to do a real clock. We want to do the second ones too. If we're doing like a old clock where it's just the lines. So we'd have 12, but then we'd have one in between. So we'd have another. So we'd have to think about how we're dividing that, but we'll get to that in a second. So we're going to have 360 on here. Divided by 12. And then we're going to hit copy. Okay. And then we're just going to come in here and hit, I think, is it alt click? Which one is it? I have to remember which button it is. Find center, alt click, 360, divided by 12. Copy. And then I'm just hitting alt click all the way around. And then hitting copy. Except for I was not getting the center on that. I know there's a quicker way to do that too, where it's just like one button. Let's double check here. Let's double check the hotkey for you real quick. Because I know you could do it with that copy, but I know there's a hotkey too that lets you do it. Is it Control D? What it is? Let's try this one more time. So rotate, hold it on the center. Okay, alt click, go 360, divided by, 360, divided by 12, copy. Yes, Control D, perfect. So if you just tap Control D, it will duplicate all the way around that circle for you, okay? So now we've got these objects duplicated around in this circle. Then let's say we want to do, we could bump this up to really make this kind of look like a clock. Then we could come in maybe with like a smaller, like half tick. So maybe we make it a little bit thinner. Make it a little shorter. Okay. We could come in and do the same thing. So I'm going to line it center here. And then I'm going to do a similar rotate here. Hover over the center. hit alt click. And then we did 30 degrees. So what if we did 15 degrees? So if we do 360 divided by, or what if I just did 15 degrees? Perfect. I don't think it was 15, but that's okay, because we can just come in and delete these other ones. I could have done better math there, but that's all right. Okay, so now we've got those lined up around our edge here. Okay, then we could do something similar where we come in here with another circle and we can line it up center and vertically. So now we're here, and let's say we wanted to create an arrow for this, right? We could come in with like a shape tool. And then I'm going to show you another tool that's super helpful here. So let's just take our pen tool and let's draw our arrow. And then I'm going to take our direct select, click this anchor, and just click and drag it here. And then we'll take our multi-select and hit object path join. Okay, so now this object is one object. Now, if I wanted to duplicate this on the other side, there's not really a direct mirror command inside of Illustrator, but we can do something pretty simple. So if I take this and click on it with our object select, and I hit Control C and then hit Control V, it's going to duplicate that object, right? But then I can go into object and hit transform and just hit reflect, and I can reflect it over whichever axis at whatever angle by selecting some of these options here. I can hit OK. Then I can just drag and snap this into the spot where I want it, right? Okay. Then I can take this object with my shape builder tool and just combine those, right? So now we've got our little arrow. And then if we wanted to make sure these were aligned properly, we could come here, align that vertically and vertically. If we wanted to shrink this little arrow down, we can. We shrink that down and then let's realign. So we'll align center, and then we'll just bring this down. Make sure we're aligned center again. Then we can take both these objects and shape builder these and just build that together. Okay. So now our arrow is shape builder together. We can take this. If we go to direct select, we can shrink this down by just hovering over the anchor points, right? Then we can come in here, align this. We could throw maybe a red on here. I could take this too and do something here to make this look a little nicer. Maybe we take another red circle and we align this center. Maybe we take this here for direct select. Edit, redo. Redo. We could take both of these, move them here. We bring this shape up, and we could shape builder these. And I could align this center. Okay. So now I've got something like this, and then I could take this object and Control C this one. I can rotate that, drop this one back in here. We could throw a different color on here too. Maybe make this one a little bit bigger. Okay, so we've built, you know, a clock using, you know, I showed you kind of the rotate tools and how those work a little bit better, right? Then if you wanted to, let's say this is part of your logo, you could take this whole thing here and do an object group, right? And then when you decide to move this around, you're good to go. You know, you could also do something similar where you want to take, maybe you want to give this, you know, watch face, you know, a background to it. So you could go align, center, and horizontally. Then you can right click and go arrange and then hit send to back. And then you could do something like that. Use your shape builder tool by selecting all of these things with your main select. And then you could shape builder out, you know, maybe this piece to get rid of this out of the way. Then you could take this background one, change this color to whatever you want. Or you could do your gradient or however you want to do that, right? But then you could object group these together. And now you've got a little clock piece that you could use for whatever, right? This is the nice thing about Illustrator, okay, is that you can come in here and build these shapes and these objects really quickly, right? And then use them to keep working on other pieces, right? So now you've got this, you've grouped this together, right? Now you can come in and grab different objects. Or if you want to ungroup this and maybe you want to add a little bit of a, you know, gradient to this thing, okay? So maybe you come in here to gradient. You want to give it like a, you know, a circular gradient. Right? So now you've got, you know, your object like this, then you can regroup these. So this is what you can use Illustrator for, right? Is building objects super quickly. You can manipulate objects. There's things that you can use, right? That shape builder tool is your best friend, right? So you're building something like this, right? And then you want to combine all these. You just take that shape builder tool, boom. Now you've created a new object super fast. You can use that in further pieces of your design, right? Or you saw how we did that with this, right? Where we use the rotate tool to create this object and give it a bit of a, you know, design. There's other things too, right? Like there's other pieces in here too that are also super helpful, like effects, right? Some of these aren't crazy helpful, but you can use certain, you know, 3D effects that can make, you know, your objects look really nice. All right, so maybe now I've got my little watch face that's sitting like this now, right? So the 3D effects can be super powerful and you can use those to your advantage. There's some other ones too where you can convert objects to shape, and there are Pathfinder tools which are super helpful. There's a ton of things you can do with the Pathfinder tools. They are kind of similar to what you can do with the shape builder tool, and I don't know why you would end up using them over the shape builder tool in a lot of these situations, right? because the shape builder tool is just so powerful. It's pretty much replaced the Pathfinder tools in a sense, where you can come in here because of just how quickly that works, right? And how quickly and efficiently you can create shapes, you know. So let me save this, and I'm going to pull up some other files here. So we've saved that one. Let's see. Do I have your files? Here's one that we could look at. This is one that I started working on for the other image in the class, right? So we have that kind of blocky one, and now we have this one too. And what I ended up doing was creating kind of a sketch inside of Photoshop that I then imported into the software here. So let's kind of maybe mess with this a little bit. So if I wanted to get some similar shapes or objects to what I've got going on here, I could come in here with my pen tool and make this object really quickly, right? And do something similar to what I'm trying to get out of this. By just turning on the stroke and turning off the fill and bumping up the stroke on this, right? So if I'm coming in here and trying to get something like that, then I could come through here and select this object. First, I'd want to take my path. So here's the difference too, right? When we're inside of Illustrator, we have paths, right? What was the other thing that I said we had? Can anybody remember that's listening still while you're listening and working on your logos? What is the other thing that I said we had inside of Illustrator outside of paths? Objects are made up of paths and what else? Somebody go ahead and throw that in the chat. If anyone's listening. Hopefully you guys are listening. Paths and what else? I'll give you a hint. I'm clicking on them right now. Vectors. Good answer. Good answer. The answer is shapes. Okay. So we've got shapes and paths, right? So what I want to do is take this path that I've got now. Anchors. No, that's also a good question. There are anchors inside of paths. Good thought. Good thought. Shapes and paths. Okay. So I want to take this path that I've got now and expand it into an actual shape. Okay. Right now it's just a path that has a stroke applied to it. So if I actually wanted to turn this zigzaggy line that I've got here into a shape, I need to go to object. No, that's great. I'm glad somebody answered. I need to go to object and go to expand. Okay. This isn't a command that you're going to use very often. So if I hit expand, I want to expand the fill and the stroke of that, and I'm going to hit OK. And you'll see now that that stroke, that path that had a stroke applied to it, is now an actual shape, right? So now what can we do? Because it's a shape, we can use our shape builder tool. Okay. So I can come in here, use my shape builder tool and delete out, or just click these areas that are overlapping, right? And now I can come through here and delete these out, right? So now I'm just left with my very cool axe shape right here, right? Super nice. So trying to just achieve the similar thing that I was doing in my sketch. And now we'll do the same thing, but I'm just going to do it with a couple shapes here. We'll just throw a white fill on here. We'll use the rotate option with our main select. And I'm going to get a little picky here. Now I'm going to take my same thing here and do my same shape builder, right? And I can come in and delete these. Now my object here is all kind of cut up the way I wanted it here. I didn't necessarily follow the same thought I had here, and maybe I could if I wanted to, but I'm not super worried about it. And then here's the next cool thing. So we talked about the paintbrush tool. So let's say I wanted to try to get this kind of Nordic sort of, you know, swirly cue inside of this axe. Let's say you're doing just an axe logo, right? So let's come over here. Let's take this axe. We'll just duplicate this over here. And we're just trying to use, you know, I have this kind of swirly cue design on here. Okay. So let's use a tool that we discussed earlier today, the brush tool. Okay. So I could come in here. It doesn't really matter what color I paint with, but for me, you know, maybe I want to do like a blue or something. I could come in here and paint, you know, that kind of design that I wanted, right? On this axe. Have it really correct my edge flow, right? Maybe I grab my brush since I'm trying to do this with my mouse. Let's actually check and see how I wanted to do this over here. Let's move this guy. So I take my brush. Let's do something like this. The other nice thing is I can take my brush size and pump up the stroke on there. Make that a little bit bigger. Maybe I want 2.5 or something. Okay. I could come in here and do like a 0.5, which might be kind of cool. Just trying to vary up these, you know, vary up the kind of stroke sizes here. Okay. So let's say I have something like this. Now what I can do is take all of these objects or paths, shift click these all, which is nice, right? And then I can go object expand, or sorry, object group, and then I think I can expand them after that. Expand appearance. Cool. And then I can use my shape builder tool on these to combine them all. So now I've got this shape happening here. Now I could hover over both of these and do another shape builder and just click this out of there and delete that, right? So now I've gone in and created that shape that I was looking for with my axe, right? By using the shape builder tool. Then I could come back here, object group all these back together. Now I've got that sort of pattern built out of my axe. I could come back over here, delete this one, come in here, Control C, Control V it, do an object transform reflect. Then I could throw it over here. Then I could do like a horizontal and a horizontal. I could take all these and do a object group and do like a vertical line. Then I could take this and this, object group these, and then vertically align these so that they fit in the same spot. So that's perfectly aligned now. So then I can do my best to just kind of move and shift things. So we've kind of started building that, you know, building from a sketch, which I think is perfectly fine, right? I just quickly sketch this out in Photoshop, right? And then you can kind of see, you know, we use the shape builder tool in order to create, you know, some unique shapes. There's definitely some more things we could do. I think I could do, I want to see if I can do this here. It won't work, but I could do something like this. Did I use the brush itself for all those precise lines in the axe? Yes. That's a good question. So all these lines in this axe head, that's a great question. I used a combination of the pen tool. So the cool thing with the pen tool is when you're using the pen tool, you can just draw polygonal lines, right? Or you can use a mixture of both polygonal and straight or sharp lines, right? Okay. So in order to do that, right, what I usually do is I'm in my pen tool and I'll set the fill off and I'll just set it to a stroke. Okay. And then I can come in here. Let's do one that's a little bit easier to see. So we'll do this blue again. So if I come in here with my pen tool, right, and I'm going to try to build the front of an axe, I can do something like this. And in order to get that kind of curved line, you just click and drag while you're in the pen tool, right? So if I'm in pen, I click the second point and drag, right? And then if I want to create a straight line after that, what happens with the pen tool is after you click and drag, it wants to continue that curve. So in order to stop that, you can click the previous anchor and then it will go back to a straight line. So if you're trying to do the kind of curved axe head part here, bam. Then you click on the previous anchor. You could go hold shift, you know, hold shift. Maybe you're doing kind of a bearded axe or something. So now you've got something like that, right? That makes sense? I don't know what this is, but that's just a way to show you that there's a unique distinction between using your pen tool, right? And these were all shapes, right? I just created shapes to build this text. And then if I wanted to keep building the text, you know, to do a V, I'd probably do something like this, right? A Nordic scythe is kind of sweet, yeah. Excuse me. take my main select here, I can line all these back up again. Group that together, and then we can center that. We can turn off our there we go. So there's definitely some ways that we can work on that, right? This isn't a perfect, font or whatever. I could definitely adjust how this looks. I don't know if I love this V or not. I might like to take, build the V out of, a more similar shape to these. Transform, reflect this. Seems all right. So we could object group this and then align this. So there are a lot of different ways, you can go about building shapes, right? Building objects. But using the shape tool, the shape tool is a huge advantage to you, right? The shape tool is a great benefit to you. We talked about the brush tool, which is super helpful, right? Especially if you manipulate, the stroke size of that brush, to where you're doing something like this. I don't know why my width tool isn't working right. Does it work with the pen tool? That's interesting. So, I mean, you saw it quickly. I just made a horn shape, which is kind of nice, right? This really helped. I'm redoing a snowflake I made yesterday. It already looks 10 times better. Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Good. Yeah, snowflake. If you're going to do a snowflake, oh, there's some cool things you could do, right? Like if you were going to do like a snowflake, you could do something like this. Or even, oh, let's get creative here. So if we did like a, well, let us do a, yes, it will. Okay. So you're going to do like a snowflake or something like this. You could take like, yeah, something like this. Let's take our Valhalla. This is not what you have to do. I'm just, you said snowflake, so I'm trying to think of using tools that we talked about today to help you get there. So we do something like this, maybe. Then you take this and use the rotate. Do something like that, maybe. I don't know. You could do something cool. I don't even know what snowflakes look like anymore. Oh yeah, you could do that too. You have like a I don't know. I'm just messing around. But yeah, you could use all kinds of things for that. Trying to think of other things that we could, any other things I can show you that will be super helpful today. What other tools can I impart upon you? Did we talk about the type text to path tool at all? Because this is super nice too. So let's say you're going to do, okay, I've got one more for you. So let's say you're going to do like a circular text kind of logo where you're trying to do like a, you've seen like surfboard shirts or something, right? Where it's like a skater shirt where it's got like, Vans does this all the time. So we could even do that as like a logo or something. So we're going to pull up a circle here and we're just going to type along a path here. So what we can do is click this circle. Say, okay, we're going to type along this path. Okay, we can pick the text. So grab like a cool font. We can bump this font up. Let's bump it up even further. Let's go like 50 or 60. Let's go like 150 or 100. Let's see. Yeah, that's what we want right there. Okay, type on a path. There we go. Okay, so we can go like test logo, test. Okay. So let's say you did something like this, right? And you got, you know, you got your text here. But let's say you wanted to equally space these like words out along this circle. You don't want to have to like go in here with your type tool and try to like space test logo, space test, to try to get it spaced around this circle. Okay, so we could do the same thing that we did in the past. So we take our text here, we take this guy, we can rotate it to where it's kind of straight here, and then we can object rasterize this, or we can just take this. Let's turn off our Valhalla stuff here. Okay, so now if we come in here, I can take this guy, I can go object, because I've centered it, right? I've centered it at the center of this. So if I hit object expand, right now this logo text should rotate properly around a circle. So if I go to my rotate tool and I find the center wherever it's at, and I hit alt click and I go every 360, so let's say 360 divided by, let's say 360 divided by 9. Okay. I hit copy, right? Then I can go control D, boom. Now look at that. Now you've got, now you've got text circled right around that. You can group those. That's a pretty quick way to make, text wrap around a circle evenly, right? Instead of having to like space it around and hit the space bar a bunch of times to try to make it look right, So that's a good way of doing that. There's all, to make a logo look interesting is a good question. So I think there's a lot of like things to do with shape language that you could think of, where, shape language, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the semester, where, human brains kind of prefer contours, right? So, they find contours, relaxing and interesting, and they enjoy looking at them. But because of the way our brain's made up, pointies and spikes and things like that create a lasting impression because of the way our brain focuses on things. It's like, hey, pointy things hurt, so it makes your brain think of those more often. So I think gathering a mixture of those two things can really help to lead to interesting designs. I think if you look at most logos, like if we took a look at our assignment here real quick. If we take a look at our assignments, let's go to 1050 here, and we go to assignments and we take a look at some of the logos that we've got here, right? So we come into size emphasis. So if we take a look at these, right? What's one thing that kind of makes sense? Or what's one thing that kind of unites these, right? You've got contours, and then sometimes they've got these, angles, harsh angles on things, right? Contour, angles, contours, angles, right? Contour, angle. So it's just the idea of like being able to, the gunk's kind of interesting because they use sort of a brush effect to do this, but dread, the dread doesn't have very many, pointy parts, but Metroid does, right? So they've used that. The Pokemon Lego definitely has that as well, right? Contour. And then the K has a really sharp piece. The Pokemon, the little thing over the E has sharp pieces, So they've used, there's little sharp points inside of the O's and things. So they use those types of things to help break up the monotony a little bit, I think. So I think if you use a good combination of those two things, good transitions between contours and like angles can help things look nice and clean. If I take a look at maybe some of the other logos I've done previously, like let's see, I've shipped this is one that I shipped to a company. So here's one that I shipped to a company. Okay. I have all different kinds of things that I worked on for them. I've got this one. Did a bunch of these fish for them. Right. So unique mix of contours and angles can help sell that for sure, right? So this is one that I sold to this company. There's a mixture there. This is just their base logo. It's a different one. There's a bunch of thoughts in there too. Let's see if I've got any other ones. This is another one I sold. These are ones that I drew up. I mean, this is for a family thing I'm doing with my family. I don't have the font installed, but because I used like a Spider-Man font, but with, you know, I drew all this stuff out. I drew the Spider-Man out. I drew all the legs out. So something to just kind of look interesting, right? Yeah, I think even if we look here, back to this. Let's look back at Unto Valhalla real quick. Some of this other ones that I drew up. Even in this, right, we've got a good mixture. So I think those are, you know, some thoughts. As far as to like make something look interesting, it's finding things that have, you know, that draw your eye in. So finding a focal point, like when you look at your logo, what's the thing you want your viewer to be drawn to, right? So for example, if we go back to our little block plop one, I feel like what our viewer is going to be drawn to here when we first drop this logo into somebody is I want them to see this, right? And recognize this. So these negative spaces kind of become the focal point. So you can use negative space to your advantage as well. It just depends, right? Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, but it's a good question to kind of, you know, ponder on for sure. Any other questions that you guys got for me before I let you go? I want to give you guys some lab time to work, but I'd like to answer any other questions. Hopefully this helped. You know, we just kind of, image cutouts are cool features as well, like making photo fill a text. Yeah, for sure. Photo fill a text shape. Yeah. Would it be fine to put the icon behind the title? Yeah, for sure. I think so. If you use like negative spaces for things where, I mean, I've seen things where people will put like text inside of a shape. Yeah, for sure. Like if you did, I don't know, this is just going to be really fast, but let's try something like this. So if you go here and maybe you throw like a text inside of here. Grab kind of a cool text here. Let's do like a big font. I'm gonna make this real big. So you have something like this, right? So maybe you make something like this, you know. And you could even, you know, object, like ungroup this. You know, you could do something to try to make these things fit inside of here. And this is really bad, but like, you get the idea of what I'm trying to do here. And then maybe you've got, you know, but now you've done something like this, right? So, I mean, hopefully that kind of makes sense, but you do something like this, right? And maybe if it were like a basketball logo, you could do something cool where you make this end up looking like a basketball, you know, or block, you know, where you do like, I don't know. That's bad, but you get the idea. Something like that would be kind of cool. You end up making it look like a basketball or something. I don't know. Anyways, hopefully this has been a little bit helpful. Hopefully explaining paths and shapes and talking about direct select and anchors a little bit more has helped, you know, help you understand how Illustrator differs from Photoshop, right? Instead of, you know, being a kind of painting based software, you're more drawing paths using shapes in order to create these things, right? So with that being said, let's do our attendance question. Let's go to Notepad here. Your attendance answer for today is going to be shapes and paths. Okay. That's going to be your answer today. Any questions before I let you go? If not, you guys are free to go, and I will see you guys next week. I'll hang out here for just a second and make sure nobody's asking any more questions. But yeah, like I said, hopefully this has helped a little bit. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for sticking around. and stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Okay, if you're having any issues, let me know. Hit me up in the Discord. I'm there. Ask people. I usually am trying to get pretty prompt responses for you on that platform. So hit us up on there if you got problems. If you want to contact your TAs first, that's fine. If they're not available, then I'm always here. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.